Honey, I Shrunk the TARDIS crew. Welcome to episode 355 of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 27th of May, 2020, and featuring Planet of the Giants, written by Lewis Marks and starring William Hartnell as the Doctor, Carol Ann Ford as Susan, Jacqueline Hill as Barbara Wright, and William Russell as Ian Chesterton. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and I just signed a lease for my new apartment in Ohio. With me are Randy Runson McCulloch.
Turn off the hot, please.
Mad Matt Winchell.
Orange Dream again tonight.
Tim the Enchanter Sheridan.
A vacation to Hoth would be nice.
And Thomas Fireheart.
Hopefully my mic cooperates today.
Anybody remember the Battlestar Galactica with like the gun on Ice Planet? Yeah, I want to go to that ice planet.
Agreed.
Yeah, who suddenly cranked up the heat outside? It was nice and mellow all spring.
Yeah, we had this nice, cool spring. I thought we were finally going to see some normal spring weather, and then it's like, nope, 80.
Well, late winter gave spring a pass and went straight on into summer.
80, heat index into 90. Okay, so I went from having my fan on low to having my fan on low with the AC on. God damn it.
At least you got AC. I have to keep my door
I can
open.
definitely say that by contrast, Australia went, at least where I am in Australia, it went from basically summer straight to winter. It was like one day it was like extremely fucking hot. The next day, oh fuck, I'm gonna have to put several layers on now.
Several layers. How cold do you think it gets over there?
Yeah.
Well, it can, at least for us anyway. Like compared to what you guys deal with.
Hands on my hips. You don't get snow.
Well, some places do.
You don't
You'd be
get.
surprised.
You don't get, feet worth of snow.
Well,
it,
I mean,
it depends. There
wouldn't
have
he
been
know better
places
than us
that have, but
what
it depends.
what he gets?
No, we're talking like snow up to your hips.
We're talking about you'd click open to open up the garage door, and you can't see out the garage door because of the wall of snow.
Oh, you're
Again,
talking
though,
Wisconsin snow. Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
It's generally a thing of like it gets cold for Australia anyway. Like you're not really, depending on where you are, it wouldn't be as bad. I mean, I've gone down south and it's been a hell of a lot colder, but they're also closer to Antarctica, so makes sense. But yeah, I mean that's the annoying thing. It's either really cold or you're gonna get heat stroke. Basically, there's no real in between in Australia a lot of the time, or at least where I live.
Yeah, speaking of Wisconsin heat, I did get heat stroke one year, and I've been nervous about getting too warm ever since. And that was 20 years ago. Ugh.
Oh.
Every once in a while, I start getting a little too warm, and it's just like, nope, I need to sit right down right over here, and I need like 3 more drinks, thank you.
I do hate those days where it just feels like it's so humid that as soon as you chug a bottle of water, you've already secreted it onto your skin. And unless you're just sitting there chugging water all day, you stay dehydrated.
I think that was Sunday for me.
So just to give you a point of comparison, Thomas, it went from about 7.5 degrees Celsius to around 26 2/3 degrees Celsius in the course of a week.
See, I mean, I live in New England, so sometimes we get both of those 2 days apart, and then back to the first one, and then back to the second one.
Well, yeah, I mean,
within the same week.
I mean, it literally was. I'm saying in the course of week, as in last week, it was 45. This week, it was 80. And it's
I'm pretty sure I've had frost and 80 each twice in the same week.
Basically,
this
we
year.
got the reverse here. It was about 26 Celsius, maybe. like a couple of weeks ago, and then like when I went to work on Saturday, it got as low as maybe 10 degrees Celsius, and it was raining. So that didn't help.
Mind you, that's without the heat index, which has spiked over 90, so over 30 degrees Celsius. Which, at about 85 degrees is the point that I have to turn on my air conditioning, which is about 29 and a half. Yeah. Because
At
it's
75,
also
I need air up here because it feels like 85.
because it has also been humid as hell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've been sitting here going, oh, Jesus, this is what Orlando feels like.
I knew I was having flashbacks to something. I forget what it was. Thanks for reminding me.
Speaking of which, I looked up the weather, what the weather's like where I'm moving to, and apparently it is Great Lakes affected territory,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the warmer part of the state. So
Where are you going?
even though Southern Ohio,
Southern Ohio.
so it's near the West Virginia border, if that's any reference. So even though it's technically not the South, it'll definitely feel like I'm moving to the South as for me.
West Virginia.
Mountain Mama.
Let's see. You're in Southern Ohio, so you're further. You're not enough to get lake effect precipitation.
When I looked it up, it said it wasn't affected by whichever lake was to the north, but it was affected by, I think it might have been Michigan, Lake Michigan.
I doubt it.
Is-
To the north is Lake Erie.
Like they specifically said for humidity, they didn't mention.
Humidity's a possibility, but you're not going to be getting lake effect precipitation, which only happens in about, I would say, a 50-mile range.
Oh, I see. I'm looking at it. It does look like there's only actually a Great Lake in the north of Ohio, so I'm not. So like, so maybe they were specifically talking about weather patterns and like humidity that comes from one of the lakes.
Yeah, because I was going to say there's a whole state between you and Michigan.
Right.
Lake Michigan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know what they're thinking, but
right.
The only thing you're really going to be affected by where you are is the river,
which is not showing up on the map I'm looking at.
The Ohio River. Literally, it literally forms the southern border of Ohio.
Okay.
That's why it's so jagged. Anyway, we are off topic. Let me put us back on. On tonight's episode.
It's opening banter, but yes, let's go.
We have birthday. Then we have one news article. Yes, it's a sucky news season. We have a few things to talk about in Geek Talk. Bill has managed to watch the Faceless Ones and will give us his update. And then, of course, we have the episode summary, the review, our final thoughts, and our ratings. So let's get down to business. We have 3 birthdays this week, on the 24th, the 25th, and the 26th. The first is the birthday of Jim Broadbent, who played the 11th Doctor, the Shy Around Girls Doctor, in The Curse of Fatal Death. He turned 71. Next is one of our honorary entries. That is Sir Ian McKellen, who played the voice of the Great Intelligence in The Snowmen, and is known for a number of other roles.
Yes.
Hi,
Including
Gandalf.
And
Gandalf,
also for his
Magneto.
wonderful acting advice.
And he turned 81. Finally, we have the birthday of Peter Cushing, who played the Doctor in Doctor Who and the Daleks in 1965 and Daleks Invasion Earth 2150. Yes, the non-canonical Doctor. But is also known as being Grand Moff Tarkin in Star Wars.
I like how you specify he's non-canonical, but you say nothing about Broadbent's Doctor.
Well, Curse of Fatal Death is a parody, so yeah.
It's a non-canonical parody. Also, besides those roles, Pierre Cushing is also well known for playing Dr. Victor Frankenstein.
He's
I was
he's
going
known
to bring that up.
like
And Red
McKellen. He
Helsing,
is
wasn't
also
he?
known
Red
for many
Helsing.
other roles.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mostly horror.
He
And he
would
was
have been
Sherlock Holmes.
107, but died in 1994 at the age of 81.
Well, at least he had a good run. Wish it could have been longer.
3 years before the special edition.
Yeah.
Thank goodness he avoided that catastrophe.
You know, it makes me wonder if he ended at the end of his life. He was like, I acted in so many things, and this is what I'm going to be known for, isn't it?
I mean, that was
Alec Guinness's lament.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Anyway, we'd go on to the news,
Okay.
but there's only one thing in the
Yep.
news.
Here's
Just
our
So
news.
one.
Big Finish has announced one of the most significant changes we have seen to their production model. For 20 years, the Doctor Who main range has cycled through the 5th, 6th, 7th, and sometimes 8th Doctors, under the understanding that most customers were longtime fans of the entire classic show. The 8th Doctor was the first to move to box sets due to the greater interest. Now, due in part to the addition of new Doctors to the Big Finish repertoire, and in part to the addition of many new fans looking for where to start, Big Finish is ending the main range at number 275 in favor of something new. Going forward, each Doctor will be recognized as a separate range. They could already be seen this way on the Big Finish website for the past year as box sets. It is not yet clear how this will affect ranges such as the Companion Chronicles or the Early Adventures, but executive producers Jason Haig-Ellery and Nicholas Briggs assure fans that there will be a natural stepping on point for fans, and these changes will allow us more exciting new possibilities and creative freedom. We will be able to introduce more surprising cast combinations, different story lengths, and more story arcs compared to when things were released as the...
And there goes Bill.
Wait,
But-
what?
Oh, he's
You-
back.
Oh, you're back. You
Oh,
you
did my
lost me
voice
there.
cut out? Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
But as I was going to say, how this is going to affect the Companion Chronicles or the early adventures, it's not.
Yeah.
Because
They haven't strictly said that, because it seems the first Doctor, second Doctor, third Doctor, etc. will be a range now.
Yeah, but the Companion Chronicles of the early adventures are a separate range in and of themselves. They're already
Technically
considered,
they are,
But that
yeah.
still makes me wonder. So will they have the early adventures and the first Doctor adventures?
correct.
Or will they combine them into something new?
No, they won't. Because the thing about the Companion Chronicles and most of the early adventures are their narrated stories rather than full-on dramas.
I don't
Whereas the
think-
main range has always been full-on dramas.
Were the early adventures narrated? I'm having trouble remembering, because I know we only covered the one box set of that. But
I'm pretty sure they were. Or if so, they were limited dramas instead of full dramas. So they had like 2-3 voices instead of, everybody they needed. But that's the question. Are they going to retcon the old stuff into these collections or not? Was what I was wondering.
I don't think they're releasing them as box sets, but they are already, like, if you go to the Big Finish website, even before the most recent update, the update before that, they had already done the collected every Doctor. It seemed almost like, it seems in retrospect like they were preparing for this. But like, if you want to find a certain Sixth Doctor story, you don't have to scroll through the main range. You can just click on the Sixth Doctor and look for it. So I think that's the only change that they would have needed to do, which they've already done.
By the way, the reason the 8th Doctor was in its own set initially was because they had the 8th Doctor appearing in the main range and stuff, and then they had the 8th Doctor stuff, which originally aired on Radio 3.
That's a good point. Yeah, it was on the radio as well.
And so once Radio 3 got done with it, they were allowed.
But instead
to
of going
it.
back to monthly ranges, they followed up with Dark Eyes, which was their first box set.
Yeah, they just kept going with it once the radio was done with it.
Because the 8 DAs, I think, were still regular releases that were. I don't think they were box sets.
Yeah, well, they're really pushing the box sets now. I guess they sell better than the monthly stuff. So it looks like that's the way things are going to go from here on out. And that's probably
they make more of the money is actual profit for a box set rather than trying to individually. It's the difference between individually wrapping 3 separate stories that make up a trilogy versus putting them all into one box and using one amount of packaging.
Well, that and the fact that the main range was originally a subscription service. So it could just be that they're getting rid of the subscription service and just going to full-on box sets.
I hadn't thought about that because there's in the Big Finish Facebook groups, there's still a lot of people who view them mostly as a subscription service and have subscribed for 10 or 20 years, and I'm wondering how they're going to take this news.
Yeah, it's going to be a change for many of them. But I think that's all we really have to say about it.
All right.
I think it'll be easier for reviewers to go back and see, oh, these were a trilogy, rather than seeing them as separate stories and figuring it out after the fact.
Yeah, I forgot where everything belonged.
And I think they had trouble, because remember when they did the Key 2 time with the 2? I don't remember if those all released at once.
They were 1 month after the other.
Okay, they did manage
I was about
to
say, I'm pretty sure they were all in a set, so...
But they did have a separate logo to connect them.
Yeah. But the reason
they do a lot of trilogies like that don't have a separate logo.
Yeah, and every now and then they're broken up by having somebody else, because they'll do 1 to 2 and one doctor, and then bounce over and do 1 to 2 and another doctor.
Yeah.
And so on and so forth.
Which works very well for the people who just renew their subscription every 6 months, but not great for the people coming in buying 1 story at a time, 2 stories at a time.
Right. So having these in box sets are going to help fix that. All right. So moving on to Geek Talk. Before we get into our normal Geek Talk, I wanted to give a first look at the new subscription streaming service, HBO Max. HBO Max is the successor to HBO Go and HBO Now, and has merged several elements from several other streaming services, such as DC Universe, Crunchyroll, etc., into its thing. And looking at it, it's a little less than I had hoped. First of all, HBO Max is about $15 a month, which makes it expensive for a streaming service.
Yeah.
I thought it would be worth it because you're getting
Just a moment. My computer's hiccuping again right now.
all the Harry Potter movies, for instance. But I should have also had access to all the Lord of the Rings movies, and I don't. DC Universe, I have access to some of the stuff on DC Universe, but not all of the stuff. I can watch Doom Patrol, but I can't watch Young Justice. Likewise, Crunchyroll has this. There's like a dozen to a dozen and a half titles from Crunchyroll. I happen to know Crunchyroll has about 50 titles on there. So I'm getting what they think you might want to watch.
Yeah, Crunchyroll's been a weird one I've been hearing. I've been hearing a little bit of the ongoing banter between HBO and Crunchyroll. Apparently, Crunchyroll doesn't want to roll over their stuff, but HBO's going, come on, everyone else is doing it.
The thing is, that makes me feel like I'm not getting, I'm looking at what they have compared to what I could get off of Netflix. And to be honest, I get more off of Netflix. The 8 or 9 hubs that are on HBO Max is HBO, of course, DC, Sesame Workshop, which is basically Henson Labs and everything to do with Sesame Street. Turner Classic Movies, Studio Ghibli, which I'll admit, having access to Studio Ghibli is nice, especially if you're a fan of that. The Cartoon Network collection, which is a fillet of things that has appeared on Cartoon Network, such as Adventure Time, Ben 10, Dexter's Laboratory, and, original Powerpuff Girls, as well as the crappy remake, yada, yada, yada. The Adult Swim collection, which has like Rick and Morty, Aqua Teen Hunger Force, Boondocks, and, a few other popular Adult Swim shows, which is also good. And then you have Crunchyroll and Looney Tunes. Now, I thought there was a couple more people that were going into this hub. I thought CW was going in there as basically being able to watch first-run CW shows.
I don't know about CW. I think CW is still on Netflix right now, isn't it?
Might be. It might be planning on moving afterwards.
It'll probably be done. Yeah, it'll probably move in like a few months to a year or two.
I also thought
CW
CBS
shows are still at the end of their seasons uploading to Netflix right now.
Yeah.
Because I thought that CBS was also going to be on here. And I see no sign of that, so...
Don't know about that.
Oh, would they be eating CBS All Access?
As far as I'm aware, they were supposed to at least get something from CBS. I could be wrong, but I thought I remembered seeing a deal being brokered between them.
Now I'm just imagining you like creeping around like LA office buildings, seeing people shaking hands while you're standing there with some binoculars.
No, I browse news articles.
I do know that for sure all the Warner Brothers stuff is going there, so all of the DC movies are going there.
Yeah, and there should have been all the New Line stuff. And I don't see anything about New Line because Warner Brothers owns
Actually,
New Line
I hadn't heard
Cinema.
about New Line yet either, but I do know New Line is technically under Warner Brothers, so...
Yeah. So yeah, it's kind of weird because everything I see is HBO labeled, not Warner Brothers labeled. And making me think that
maybe that deal hasn't gone through yet, or
maybe.
HBO is prioritizing their stuff first and slowly bringing other things in later.
Possibility.
Well, HBO, because I had HBO Go prior to this, I didn't have access to all 8 Harry Potter films. I had access to Crimes of Grindelwald, which is being aired on HBO right now, but not the original 8 Harry Potter films. And that's one of the things that immediately pops up on my front screen is Harry Potter, all 8 films. So those would have had to come from the Warner Brothers library.
I wonder if it's a matter of like someone else still has the streaming rights at the moment, so they have to wait for them to expire before they can move
That's
it across.
possible, especially
which
with
is
stuff
my
that's
theory
on
with the
Netflix.
CW stuff, yeah.
But like I said, New Line should have brought in all the Lord of the Rings stuff. And maybe I do.
We're digging enough? Found something?
Well, no, something new came up on my front page, which is called Blockbuster Franchises. And Lord of the Rings is listed in there. And this was not here this morning.
Well. The updates are still
So
rolling
basically-
in.
Yeah, it's basically they're still fiddling with it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Middle Earth. There we go. Well, that's
Just out
Oh,
of
wow.
curiosity, I
They have
searched for
access to the
HBO
animated
Max.
Hobbit.
Just out of curiosity, I searched for HBO Max New Line. I clicked on an FAQ page that mentioned New Line, and I noticed that they got rid of that FAQ page and turned it to a help search, which does not bring up any results when I search for New Line. So they may be trying to sweep that under the rug and be a little more discreet and keep more things behind closed doors than they were doing before.
Yeah. It might be possible that Warner Brothers is just basically eating New Line at this point. Who knows? But no, I'm disappointed by some of the stuff that are especially missing from the DC stuff. I was really hoping to catch up on Young Justice, and I can't. I can watch Doom Patrol, but I can't watch Titans, and that's kind of annoying.
Yeah, that's considering that the pilot of Doom Patrol is a Titans episode.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yet they have all of Batwoman, but they don't have
Which
any
is
of the
also
other
all on Netflix, I believe.
Yeah,
which
but
is
they don't
considering
have
that's where I
any of
watched
the
it.
other. They don't have any of the other CW shows.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a weird fillet.
Mm.
Yeah,
'Cause I was gonna ask
consider
if it's
launch
Oh
the
wait, no,
same.
they also have Supergirl, but they don't have Flash and they don't have Arrow.
Yeah, I think it's
Hmm.
just launch pains here. They're just trying to get stuff on there, but
Yeah.
they can only go so fast before it would overburden people.
But
Yeah.
at the first look, it looks like it might be getting better. But I would, if you're not subscribed now, I would probably wait a few weeks and see if this gets better.
Yeah,
'Cause that's it.
Mhm.
it basically sounds like they didn't do the Disney thing of waiting until they had a ton of the streaming rights back to just launch Disney Plus with a ton of stuff on it.
Well, they've already had to delay this like 3-4 times before launching now.
Mhm.
Mm.
So wait until after I get to binge The Mandalorian and there was something else. And Picard before I start looking at this.
I need to finish Picard. But yeah, I mean, other stuff is really cool. Like I said, the fact that this is now exclusively where Studio Ghibli is, which is weird because I thought those were co-produced by Disney. But
They were dubbed underneath Disney, but
Yeah,
I think
dubbed
these are
underneath
redubs.
Disney, yeah.
These are redubs and everything, so
but it has, I mean, that's kind of cool because every now and then, just sitting down and watching a Studio Ghibli is just kind of nice.
Mm.
Nice, relaxing family viewing. You get access to most of the HBO original series in here. I was planning on starting to watch the Watchmen series shortly.
I've heard it's okay.
I've heard good things. Plus, some of their featured movies are both current and old. I could watch Casablanca right now if I wanted to,
Yeah.
Awesome.
as well as apparently the new It movies.
Hello, Georgie.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag. I would pay attention for a few weeks and see if they start getting more stuff. At the moment, it feels a little underpowered for its price. But this is also where you're going to be getting Doctor Who. I should mention
Okay.
that.
Eventually, yeah, that's where
Yeah.
we're officially going to get
They have it
streamable
currently.
Doctor Who.
They currently have it through Series 11. They do not have Series 12.
Yeah, you'll
So
be
it's
waiting
gonna be
a
like
while for that
Netflix,
if
so
it's
it's an upload at
anything.
the end of the season, sort of thing.
Probably update like about the time it hits video. fully.
Yes, if it's anything like we have to deal with in Australia, you guys will be waiting basically until Series 13 is about to air, and then they'll dump Series 12 on there.
Yeah, it might
That's what
be
it
the
was.
case.
That's what it's. Yeah, that's what they've been doing
So-
over here. At least it might
So
be
I should
different
still
in the
check
US.
if my new apartment complex includes BBC America in its free, well, not free, but its default cable package.
Or failing
Ah.
that, see if you can get a hold of BritBox.
Mm-hmm.
Well, BritBox only does classic, not New Who.
I suppose, yeah, you need an alternative for New Who.
Yeah, personally, here we just basically buy the season from Amazon. It's no longer
And that lets
free
you
with
watch
Prime.
on air day?
On air day or the day after.
Sorry, I'm having chair issues.
Anyway, that's all I had to say about HBO Max.
All right. So next after that is the Orville, which I thought was a 2020 season when I watched it. And then I realized, then when I looked it up after the fact, I realized, no, the season ended in 2019. I was just over a year behind.
Mhm.
Yeah. Season 2 was a while ago.
So that said, now that I finally watched it, my final verdict on the Orville season 2 is that honestly, if this had been season 1, I think they would have been sued because it seems more like a new season of a new Star Trek series than a parody. There's still a few parodic elements in there. For example, like they'll mention like alcohol or like young adult culture more often than Star Trek will. At least the Star Trek shows that I've seen. It's a little bit more grounded in the regular day-to-day like Earth life, but really the main difference is that it's working class people instead of military culture. But this season is a lot less. The jokes are a lot more integrated. It's more like I would expect Star Trek to be in a post Buffy world. Not that I can in any way compare it to Whedon's work. But just saying like nowadays, comedy as part of your drama. Actually, even I shouldn't even say that because even in 1968, Star Trek had comedy integrated in things.
Mm-hmm.
So even then, like it's not that different from Star Trek.
Spock telling off McCoy for wielding his snakes and rattles.
It's like if there were a lot more McCoys, really, because McCoy is kind of like this working class, like doesn't give a shit guy, and it's like if it's like a modern version of that.
Even Next Gen had its humorous moments. And so did DS9.
I always
but they were
found
toned
Next
down.
Gen dry, but I never got to the end of the series.
It was the odd episode, like the one where Q sent them into Sherwood Forest.
Ah.
You have Worf going, "I am not a merry man."
But yeah, honestly, it feels a lot less like a parody and a lot more like they just they're just taking Star Trek ideas and moving in a new direction with them.
That's basically what the show. That's what McFarlane wanted to do with the show. It was the Fox executives that wanted.
I was going to say he would be. Well, they didn't want to be sued by Paramount, I'm certain, or whoever owns the rights at the CBS, whoever can sue them. They didn't want to be sued by.
They can't really sue them because while it's Star Trek, they do not own the rights to sci-fi adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just it. You can't sue them over having similar themes.
But I think it's still a similar enough show that it would be dragged out in court.
I'd argue against that. There's
Companies
still a
are
lot
ridiculously
of
petty when it comes to this sort of thing, so it wouldn't surprise me.
It wouldn't surprise me that they would want to, but at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if it'd be a waste of time and money. So,
but
now that said, I do think all of that is an improvement because I'm not a Family Guy fan, and that was my fear watching The Orville was that it would be Family Guy-ish and I would turn it off.
That's what the Fox execs wanted. They wanted Family Guy in space.
Whereas with this being more Star Trek, I definitely enjoyed it. And it was almost Terminator-y at the very ending of season 2. So in other words, a lot of seriousness with a little bit of comedy, not as compared to the other way around.
Yeah. And yeah, like I said, this is what McFarlane wanted to do. McFarlane loved Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation.
Mhm.
And then he saw what Abrams and then what CBS was doing with the franchise, and he's like, no, I'm going to go off and I'm going to make my own Star Trek.
Mhm.
And I'm going to have Fox make it for me.
Yeah. And there'll be
Because
blackjack and hookers.
Because I have Fox by the balls, and they will do anything I want as long as I keep making them new Family Guy. So he's did this, and they thought, and the execs were like, oh yeah, Family Guy in space, let's do that. And he kind of kowtowed for a bit, and then about halfway through season
Yeah, he
one,
probably got a
it
little
back.
bit more free, more leeway after a successful season.
Mm-hmm. Well, about halfway through season 1, he started to get his act together.
Mhm.
And started to show, no, guys, this is what the fans like. This is what they're appreciating. We're going to do this.
Mhm.
And the season 1 came off decent after that point. And now season 2, yeah, he has carte blanche.
Yeah. And I definitely
Also,
thought by the end of season 2 that it was going very well. And if there's a season 3, I definitely
There is, but it's
will
going to
keep
be a
up with
Hulu
it.
exclusive.
Hulu is where I watch it anyway, so
Yeah,
that's
it's going to be a
perfectly fine
Hulu
for me.
exclusive because of production time.
Mhm.
The way that with Seth's schedule and Family Guy and everything, his production schedule, he wouldn't have gotten the Orville finished until about a third of the way into the next season. So
Mhm.
he's just like, okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to drag it out on Hulu. And of course, that might be held off even further now because of,
Right.
what's going on? All pending.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of delayed shows in 21 and 22 probably.
Movies are already going to be
So
stacked
yeah,
on top of one another.
Oh yeah.
So it sounds like that's all to say for Orville season 2. The other thing I finished this week was Supergirl season 5. Now, I had talked about the first half of the season when Crisis aired, and I was very critical of it. I didn't like a lot of the directions they were going. It ranged from a few things that were boring to a few things that were cringy. The second half of the season, it's almost like a completely different show. Obviously, Crisis on Infinite Earths kind of changed everything, and Supergirl was one of the shows that was changed the most by it. I don't think it's a spoiler at this stage to say that Lex Luthor came basically back to life in the mid-season to become one of the main characters. And the second half of the season is basically this four-dimensional chess game between Brainiac 5, Lex Luthor, the big bad from the first half of the season, and the heroes all trying to maneuver and get their goals. Some of the goals being very obvious and in the open, and some of them you have to kind of guess by knowing the characters' motivations and their actions. So I found that to be a very strong half of the season. They kind of resolved in a couple of different ways the character drama that was going on between Kara and Lena in the first half of the season. Hopefully they don't just start up with some new bullshit in season 6, but it's a CW, so they probably will. But yeah, I think that the second half of Supergirl season 5 was a lot stronger than the first half and a lot more enjoyable.
Okay. Yeah, I'm being pestered that I need to start watching this stuff again by my GM, so I might have to sit there and do a mass thing on Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
Have you? No, you're only watching this stuff as it's coming up on Hulu. Does that have the current story arcs?
So it's basically as each season completes, it uploads to Netflix, and the new seasons don't start again until October. So
Okay.
this was the most recent Supergirl. The most recent Flash just uploaded, so I'll probably be watching that this week. And then Legends of Tomorrow, if that season's probably also finished. If it is, I'll be watching that in June
Okay.
as well.
And is the most recent stuff up on Hulu?
I
Or
don't know. I don't think it's on Hulu because I remember it started off being on Hulu. I'm pretty sure it's only on Netflix now. Well,
Okay.
Netflix, and the newest 5 episodes are always on CWTV.com. But if
okay.
you want to see more than 5 episodes back, it's Netflix.
I was just wondering if you'd seen Stargirl yet.
Stargirl, I have not. I did see somebody kind of dissect a scene from Stargirl episode 1, but I have not actually watched the episode yet.
I've been
I'm
hearing.
guessing by how recent that was that it was just episode 1 that's aired. But
I've been hearing about
episode 1 and
Stargirl. It's
2
up
is
to
aired.
episode 2.
1 and 2, okay.
Yep.
And
Episode 3
and
is
so
gonna
far,
be
it's been
first,
actually a pretty good reaction.
because Bob really wants me to watch that. So. All right. So that's Supergirl season 5. Movies.
Okay, so moving on from a female led superhero TV show to whatever the fuck Barbarella is.
Barbarella is
Like,
Barbarella.
it
That's
is-
from what I hear.
Yeah.
I think
It's,
I have a copy of it in one of my box sets. I haven't had time to search it down and play it.
It's weird. I mean, like, I'm glad I realized that it was listed as a comedy, but even then, it's weird because basically you could sum up the movie by saying she crashes on this planet, and then she gets accosted by someone, then she has sex, then she goes somewhere else, then rinse repeat for a while.
Oh yeah, it's
and
it didn't quite have the balls to be porn, but it came close.
Well, that is kind of the funny thing, is that this is late 60s, so every time there's a sex scene, it's like cut
More like a
away,
make-out
you never
session.
see anything.
Yeah, like I
Um,
said, it wanted to be porn,
mm,
but chickened out.
yeah.
Like the gusto to go full on.
Yeah, I mean, from what I can recall, the French comics this is based on were like erotica, but like light erotica, so there probably wasn't like actual porn flat out. It was probably still fairly softcore. But so it's kind of funny that, like, for as much as they talk about sex and as much sex as she's having, there's not really anything shown at all outside of like maybe the odd kiss now and then. But like there's one bit where she's just like, oh, I think I know what to do, and then like it cuts away, cuts back, and they've had sex and just like in the edit. And you know, it's interesting. I realize this is probably the only Jane Fonda movie I've ever seen now. Which is weird because I recognize her from stuff when she's like, you know, closer to now. But yeah, I cannot, like, I went through I went through her filmography the other day and was like, I don't think I've seen anything she's done. I know of movies she's done, but just never actually watched them.
I think I've seen 2 or 3 things she's in.
I think I've seen things she's directed but not starred in.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I've seen stuff she's involved in. I'm not sure which ones off the top of my head, though.
It's also
I've
kind
seen
of funny.
things with her dad and her brother and her niece, but not her.
Which is funny because apparently her niece was considered for a remake at one point, but they never got around to it. They've been trying to do remakes of Barbarella for forever, basically.
Yeah,
but they've just never done one.
They keep getting abandoned. The last one was abandoned in 2009.
Yeah, apparently that was gonna.
Just keep hitting that development hellhole.
Yeah, and I think in at least one case they tried doing a TV show, but the person that was going to be behind it just lost interest and wanted to work on something else.
So yeah, I've seen at least 3 things with her in it: The China Syndrome, 9 to 5, and On Golden Pond.
Barbarella, Queen of the Galaxy, the Netflix original series.
I could honestly see a Barbarella show on HBO.
Yeah,
so.
me too.
Or HBO is possible too, I
And
suppose.
and that one they would sex it up because
Oh yeah.
HBO.
Game of Thrones, why not?
I was mainly just glad that for as much as this movie feels like you're probably gonna, not actually see her get raped, but I kept worrying that it's like, there are a few times where it looks like she might, but thankfully no. And pretty much it's kind of like the first instance of it is hilarious, just because the whole idea is in this far-flung future, humans pretty much don't have sex at all. And like what they do is they take a pill and they like put their hands together and like that makes them orgasm somehow. So like, she's like, "Oh, so you want to do that? Okay." But he's like, "No, I want, actual sex." But instead of being like, "Oh no, I can't do that," and being like goaded into it, she's just like, "Oh, okay." Just has no idea what to do. So you get kind of humor out of that.
Was there nudity in your version or not? Because apparently there were 2
Uh,
releases of this.
There is, but like nothing below the waist. It's just like tits and that's it.
Well, the reason I'm saying is because it was originally released with nude scenes in '68, and then it was re-released without them in '77, and that's when it got the name Barbarella, Queen of the Galaxy.
So for all I know, there might have been those cut out, but there are definitely instances where, like, right at the start of the movie, she strips out of this astronaut costume, and then she's basically walking around naked for like 10 minutes. And you don't see, again, it's more so you don't see anything below the waist. But she does, like, there is like a thing where someone calls her up and she's like, "Oh, I can throw something on." And he's like, No, don't worry." But yeah, it's also funny because one of the main things that I mainly just wanted to watch this out of morbid curiosity, and because I'd heard of Barbarella, but I didn't really know much about it beyond like, oh, this is just, this sort of weird sci-fi thing. And I found out later that, like, one of the characters in it is named Duran Duran, and that's where the fucking band got their name from. Which
That
is like,
figures.
oh, yeah, that makes sense. Though, of course, it took them until the 90s to do a song about Barbarella, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, I'd say this is worth giving a shot just to see, like, late 60s sci-fi of this nature, because it feels like this could have, it's weird because it does feel kind of segmented and all that, but like, and there are kind of issues, but they're just nitpicky, where it's just like, wow, she's kind of useless. A lot of things is just she gets into a situation she has to be rescued from, and then like
Then
has
proceed
sex
on to the
and
next
then moves
scene.
on. Yeah, and it's like, that's kind of annoying, but it's like, oh, because you can't tell as well, because this is listed as a comedy. I'm wondering, okay, are they taking the piss, or is this just what the character is? It's like,
I think
but yeah,
it post-release has been labeled as a comedy, and it fits a little better on that end. But I do think they were trying to take it seriously when they were making it, and it doesn't pan out.
There is some comedy moments, but yeah, it is like, I don't know. I'll put it this way: compare this. What a fun thing to do to like show the transition of sci-fi of this nature is to watch this, and then watch the '80s Flash Gordon, and then watch, like, I don't know, something more modern anyway, to just be like, holy shit. Because it's funny, because even Flash Gordon from the '80s looks like it had a bigger budget than this did.
Oh yeah, it was 80s Flash Gordon was just like a barely leftover fragment of a 70s planned movie.
That and the fact that '80s Flash Gordon was highly affected by Star Wars, because
To a degree, yeah.
that was the age that everybody wanted to be the next Star Wars. That's the reason we got Star Trek the motion picture, is they wanted to rival Star Wars.
Which is kind of funny when you consider the fact that George Lucas wanted to do Flash Gordon, apparently.
But he couldn't get the rights to it, so he's just like, forget it. I'm just gonna take one of my original stories and start rewriting it.
But yeah, I'd say it's worth checking out. But if you are looking into it for like the sex stuff, it's not worth it for that. It's funny, but I will say it is honestly quite funny. There are like a few issues here and there, and I could see a modern remake of this working with the right person, because as sex is treated so casually in this, and there's no like hugging her figure kind of shots at all. It's just like she might be wearing something that's a bit either skimpy or sexual, whatever, but it's like they just kind of let it be a thing. Like, if someone can do it that way, it would probably work. Like, if this had been done in like 2002, like, it would have been pretty crap, probably. But yeah, I would say check it out, but it would be funny to do a double feature of this and then watching Flash Gordon from like 1980.
It'd actually be fun to find something from the 50s and the 40s. Find something from the 70s that's not Star Wars. And just kind of have a decade of evolution of science fiction.
I guess if you even go back,
that's
Star Crashers.
That would have been one of those things I would have done back when I was running the room at the sci-fi room at GeekCon. Just take a slice.
The funny thing is, you could go back far enough and do the 30s Flash Gordon serials, and then moving forward from there.
I have most of those on DVD.
Oh, I guess Superman serials wouldn't quite count as what we traditionally think of as sci-fi.
Yeah, no,
depends
I
on
was
what you're looking at.
I was looking for space sci-fi.
Like Buck Rogers?
Buck Rogers might work. Anyway.
Oh God, you could count Flash Gordon as 70s, and then you really wanted to make it cheesy, I could include Roger Corman's Battle Beyond the Stars from the 80s.
There you go.
If you've ever seen that, it's basically the Magnificent Seven in space. Or The Last Starfighter.
Well, anyway, I guess we're done with Barbarella, so King of the Monsters.
All right, so...
Yes, speaking of sci-fi.
In celebration for me having HBO Max, I decided to watch a movie on it this afternoon. And after flipping through, I randomly decided to choose Godzilla, King of the Monsters from 2019. And I watched it, and while I'm a fan, not a rabid fan like Matt, but a decent fan of the old 60s and 70s Godzilla movies. And I was just kind of curious how this stacked up. I was pleased with their version of Godzilla. It wasn't absolutely perfect, but it was close enough, and it sounded fine.
Oh yeah, the sound, by the way, in this one was an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
I thought their Mothra looked cool.
Mm-hmm.
Their Rodan was kind of an interesting take on Rodan. I was a little less pleased by by Monster Zero, aka King Ghidorah. It looked okay, but it was missing something in the sound. They did, however, do a thing where they differentiated the head so that each of the head had a different personality. That worked okay.
Do you want a little behind the scenes thing about that, by the way?
No, not really.
Okay.
I'm trying to get this review done as fast as possible so we can get on to the main event. The actual storyline was okay. Most of the characters were good. They kind of spun it off from the 2015 without involving any of the original 2015 characters until you get to the overall organization that seems to be tracking all these monsters, which they have now decided to call Titans. I suspect they would have called them Kaiju, except for then there's the guys from Pacific Rim going, no.
Even though they're both under the same studio, but you don't want to start mixing those without being official yet.
Right. In any case, the guy playing the Japanese scientist from the original returns, and I really like him. He's the guy, the one guy that has like all the respect for Godzilla, and of course insisted that he calls him by the Japanese name Gojira. And they now have to deal with this plot by a terrorist organization to awaken all the giant monsters, which winds up happening. And then they basically have to send them all in for basically Kaiju Smackdown 2019 live at Fenway Park. And at one point, Godzilla dies, and they bring him back. You know, regular stuff. Yeah, Godzilla dies, it doesn't take. And there's a lot of sacrifice and a lot of, I mean, it's a really freaking depressing story. Because you start out with a family that lost its son in the Godzilla attack on San Francisco in 2015. And then the family further falls apart when the mother joins the terrorists. And the father is with the main organization. She winds up basically setting free Monster Zero. He winds up backing Godzilla. It gets weird. But it's not a bad story. It's not going to win any Academy Awards by anything, but it's a nice popcorn flick. I enjoyed that much. The only thing that really took me out of it was the King Ghidorah roar. I really wish they had made it closer to the original, like 60s, 70s King Ghidorah, because that was such an iconic sound.
It's hard to decide where to go with things. Like I said, the Godzilla roar was already a big upgrade compared to the
yes,
previous
it
film.
was. That one I could hear it, and I heard Godzilla. I'm like, I knew it instantly. It's like, that's Godzilla.
And also with the way the movie ended, they're teasing that there might be a continuation for Ghidorah out of this, but we'll see.
They teased it. Yeah. And it's always possible. I mean, I'm kind of hoping they do something like Destroy All Monsters.
I kind of hope they can at least last long enough to do that too, yeah. Big old giant monster brawl, just to make up for all the complaints about just focusing too long on the humans. Just big monster brawl, yes.
They also seem to be setting up Skull Island from the Kong thing as the new monster island.
Not sure about that, but they have reference back to Kong, yes.
If you read the news articles at the end of it, they're like all the monsters are basically heading for Skull Island, and all this stuff that was found on Skull Island having to do with the monsters. So, yeah, they seem to be setting that up as the new monster island.
Well, they were already setting up some ideas with that of Kong, Skull Island, because there's paintings of Mothra, Godzilla, and King Ghidorah that are apparently ancient already on the island.
And that actually makes sense, because even in the very first King Kong movie, there were already a bunch of monsters living on the island.
Well, technically, they were creatures that lived underground, but Godzilla also technically apparently lives underground for the most part. He just goes through waterways.
There's basically there's waterways leading through the earth that's this whole hollow earth thing, and apparently at the center of it is this giant Atlantis-like city that is where Godzilla lives. Yeah, I had slight trouble swallowing that, but I
again, they warmed us up to that with like a movie or two previous, so.
Anyway, like I said, it's a nice popcorn flick. Watch it, especially if you're a giant monster fan. Or if you're not getting your Pacific Rim fix, this might also tide you over.
At least temporarily. We're not sure if there's going to be another Pacific Rim, but here the second one was not that good.
Yeah, I heard that too.
Oh, well. So, are you done? Are you good?
Yeah, good. Move on to your comic.
Alright, I'm going to share these really quick in the chat with you guys, and I'm going to link URLs for visuals from there. So I'm going to drop this one first. Where is it? It wandered off on me. For crying out loud, I just had everything prepared. Now that I'm looking for it, I can't find it. Oh, there it is. Okay, it got lost because of saving tile cards for the stream. So first thing I'm going to show off is I'm going to show off the covers here. I decided to. I kept hearing stuff about some of the independent comic books running around these days, and how there's Kickstarters and whatnot. So I decided that since there's a small indie company that's slowly working its way upwards, they're at 100 and some stores now that they're being produced in. I heard that one of their books was a fantasy series, so I picked up volumes 1 and 2 of Blood Realm. Essentially, Alterna, I think is what the company's called. They run a comic book series at 3 books at a volume, and they see how the good sales go, and if the sales are good, they might continue it for another volume. Right now, Blood Realm has hit issue 2 of the 3rd volume. I'm kind of waiting for it to wrap up, and then I might invest in the 3rd volume once it's ready. But I got the 2 collected first volumes here, and essentially it's... I'm going to share some art here. This is actually from the image gallery in the back of the book, the first one I'm sharing here. And it's very simplistic art. It's only 3 colors, white, black, and red. And it's very kind of sketchy-esque, but it's not like ugly per se. It reminds me a lot of the artwork I remember from like the 90s Ghost Rider, which was a particular run of that franchise I really enjoyed. The first story focuses on these 3 women who are apparently a part of some religious order where they're all supposed to be silent. The only times they're supposed to speak is when they are defending themselves or when they are speaking to their god, essentially. And you get to see what they can do to people when they talk. They literally destroy a dragon at one point in the story, in the 3 issues that they're part of. And they are sent on a quest.
So they're Black Bolt?
Said
so they're Black Bolt?
Kinda? I believe Black Bolt can fly around, correct?
Maybe. I'm not sure.
I think he can. But anyway. They are sent on a quest to find a relic of a evil wizard who might be able to come back through the usage of the relic. I'm not going to give away spoilers because basically the stories will run in the 3 issues, or in this particular case, the combined 1 book, and then the story will continue in the next volume collection. And so far, it seems like they're building up stuff for the first couple of volumes, and it sounds like volume 3 is when things are starting to come together. So speaking of which, in the 3rd volume, while this is going on apparently somewhere else in the world, a wizard and a group of goatmen are attempting to come in contact with their main army, and they're not sure what's happened. It seems like everyone just kind of fell off the face of the earth. The wizard is forced to use a very heavy magic spell, which is taxing and causes him to go comatose. And he actually goes into the realm of magic, to which this giant bee, almost like Lovecraftian being, just kind of suddenly makes contact and is like, "Yeah, hi there, I want to eat you," before he pops back out. But he gets the nagging feeling he's still being watched by something, and I won't ruin the end, but he had every reason to be afraid. But yeah, I'm really enjoying the art. The storyline has been interesting. And I was kind of thinking, well, it's been like 6 issues. I kind of do hope it starts coming together. And what I've been hearing from the release of the 1st and 2nd issue of Volume 3 is that is the direction they're going in now. So it's going to be interesting to see where this goes. I quite enjoyed the artwork, and hopefully I get to see some more pretty soon. I think it releases like every 8 months or something like that, is when they start another volume.
All right.
But yeah, it was just a really interesting read, and I figured I would share, since I'm not sure how many people know about this through this being a independent book. And do excuse the crudeness of my camera work. This is me literally taking it off of my cell phone camera. and trying to balance the book over my keyboard. So yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing that was worthy of a shout out. If there's any more questions or if you want spoilers, I can go into that. But otherwise, yeah, I really like where it's headed.
Okay.
I guess that's it then. So we're moving on to
The
review.
The Faceless Ones. Our
Oh no,
weekly
that's right. You
review-
the Faceless Ones. You
our
update
weekly
the
review
Faceless
of this
Ones.
episode. And rewatching this, I barely remembered having watched it in the first place. And when I went back to listen to the podcast, I figured out why. Because when y'all reviewed this, I was in Catalonia. I forget the name of the village I was in off the top of my head. But I must have done a review of Shame at some point, but I could not tell you when. But I originally gave this 3.5 stars, slightly above average. Looking back at this, actually today, the main thing I noticed was the interesting place it is in terms of technology. Because on the one hand, the first thing you see is that 60s passenger planes look very similar to today's passenger planes compared to, say, 40s planes, which were much closer in time. However, their entire scheme would have been ruined by post 9/11 security measures. Because with computers today, we know who's supposed to land on the other side, and the entire plan in the Faceless Ones is replacing people and creating fake identities, which would have caused all sort of havoc with airport security systems. So that's really neither here nor there, but I thought it was just really interesting thing watching the episode. In terms of changing my score, so I've been thinking hard about this, and I gave it slightly above average. And watching the episode, I enjoyed it, but I don't know if it's really good enough to get that 4 out of 5 spot. Like, that's a certain tier. And actually, I think I will. I think I enjoyed it enough to give it that 4.0 out of 5. Slight boost, and I couldn't really tell you what changed to account for it. But I mean, it had my attention all the way through, which I can say telesnaps I almost always have to rewatch, so that's definitely part of it. But yeah, I was paying attention. The animation was easy to follow. It was effective. I don't think there was any real special effects to talk about. But yeah, I think I guess I'll go with 4.0 out of 5.
All right. A raising from the 3.5 to a 4 doesn't affect the overall score that much.
Just like my original didn't affect the overall score that much.
Yeah, well, everybody seems to be raising it up to the 4. So
yeah,
at the moment, you've still got.
Well, I saw it looked like Matt changed it to a 4.5.
Yep, and I think his did, but Thomas's didn't.
Although
Yours
looking at the master sheet, I also realized that we never adjusted what we consider the core cast to be to include Tim.
That's because I stopped paying attention to the core.
Got you. So we almost might as well delete that column then, if it's considering Tim's been with us for ages now.
Yep.
Yep.
Next sheet, no more core.
Actually, that's on the master. But
yeah, it's only on the master sheet.
And really, it was only supposed to be necessary in the case of a tie. But
it was there because certain columns we would have where the most of us would give something around like a 3, and then the guest would give it a 0 or a 1 or a 5. So we wanted to differentiate that, but
we haven't had to deal with that for seasons.
Yeah.
We only invite guests who have a known history of being able to review.
Yeah. Although I still remember Lucas dragged down our Day of the Doctor review.
Yeah, I never
Yeah.
really got why he despised that so much.
And we know if Bill says it's a great starting up point, it's probably not.
Well,
Cut-
that was what Moffat said. That was
And you trusted Moffat.
Yeah.
Why, Bill? Yeah.
And now Big Finish is promising good starting on points. Do we trust them?
Dum.
We'll have to see.
We'll have to see.
Anyway, that's your retcon on the Faceless Ones.
Yep.
I think that's up for me to do it next week because I'm the only one left.
Do it. Do it.
I was going to do it this week,
unless
but
Aaron
yesterday
was on the original version, so unless you could get Aaron's new score.
Oh, like she has time. Anyway, that takes us up to the summary, and I believe it's you again, Bill.
That's me. Yep. All right, count me in.
Let me get the stopwatch. All right. And okay, yep, the image gallery is ready for when we're after stopwatch. All right, so start in 3, 2, 1, begin.
I believe it's a cold open where we see two business partners arguing over something, and one of them kills the other. The TARDIS then lands, but there's something going on with the controls. They're not sure what. Until they emerge, and at first they think that they're in a giant world. I should have looked up Gulliver's Travels to give names to things. They think they're in a giant world, and they see giant ants and things. But before long, they realize that no, they're actually just really tiny. And that they also get a little concerned when they see a lot of dead insects and other animals, other small animals, dead all around them. They get separated, at which point Ian and Barbara find what seems to be a stash of a pesticide as well as its formula. The group then get back to... Barbara touches this pesticide without realizing what it is until Ian describes it as pesticide. But Ian is so busy being a scientist that he does not pay any attention to the fact that Barbara has touched this and is now upset. So then the groups get back together. They learn a little bit more about it. Barbara continues to get upset every time they talk about just how efficacious this pesticide is, until eventually she passes out and they realize that she is sick. And they realize that getting back to full size is the only way to cure her. And the process for all this, they try to get a hold of the police because they have found the dead body. So they do end up getting attention of the police, which caused the police to come just as the remaining two business partners are talking about some dirty business involving covering up the murder. And also just as the TARDIS crew are blowing up the remaining pesticide because it is just way too effective and way too dangerous to be unleashed upon the world. So this causes them to become kind of not to be distracted when the police shows up to figure out what the hell's going on. They pop back into the TARDIS. The piece of grain that they brought with them remains at its own size, while the TARDIS crew go back to their full size, which is used as an explanation to show why Barbara grew back to full size, but the poison in her stayed tiny, and now she's fine. And then I think they're now going to... Oh, yeah, it would have to be the Dalek invasion of Earth next. So they're still on Earth. The end.
All right. 3 minutes, 5 seconds.
I was aiming for under 3 minutes for a three-parter.
Oh.
I had too many hedging noises in there.
All right.
Took
And I
too
think
long
that
to think of
also-
a few key points.
I think this also is the middle point of 3 Earth stories in a row, although it's past, present, and future.
Mm-hmm.
That might have actually been a thought, a plan with them. So let's talk about what we liked about this overall. And Matt, you are first.
Oh, I get pulled up first. I adore the miniature sets. They don't produce them a whole ton, but there's enough there that for 1960s sci-fi, you get the general gist of what they're going for on a budget. And it must have been hard for them to get some of that stuff because I think a few of them might have just been backdrops against giant pictures.
Yeah, I can tell you that this originally this concept was planned for the first season of Doctor Who and got scrapped twice because of budget issues with it.
Mm-hmm. I can see where that would definitely been an issue. Because we have at least
did that Marco Polo, so
because we had at least 3 different giant bugs, plus the giant sets, plus having to try and set up other sets on the cheap without being able to recreate them completely, obviously. But trying to pull off something that you could do like a point of view shot thing that would make up for it.
Plus, the original script probably involved like giant cat arms.
And this is before chroma key.
Yeah, this is before chroma key, which you could kind of do, but not nearly as good and not nearly on the budget that Doctor Who had at the time.
Yeah. Now, if this had been done after, say, 1975, oh yeah, they could have done this on a budget, no problem, because they could have blue screened the entire thing.
And if they had a really good crew that knew what they were doing with the blue screens, they'd do an amazing job.
I think even in 1973, they were blue screening episodes.
It was 1970 to 1975 that they picked up blue screen tech. They didn't get decent with it though until the mid to late 70s.
True. Nobody lauds the quality of Third Doctor era blue screen for sure.
Even early Fourth Doctor blue screen was questionable. Robot, anybody?
Yeah, at times, yeah. Somebody shined the blue light onto the chrome robot. The set director looks around angrily.
I consider Robot a Third Doctor episode with Tom Baker in it.
More or less.
But somewhere before Key to Time, they figured out how to do blue screen right. And then, of course, they were the masters of blue screen by the time everybody else in the world had gone to green screen.
Stick with what you're good at until you train them up enough.
Well, yeah, you realize it was Lucas that invented green screen, don't you?
Wouldn't surprise me.
I knew they used it because that was one of the things that they wanted to touch up when they did the special editions. Was all the black outlines from the green screen in Empire Strikes Back.
Was that still blue screen in Empire? Because I think he made the green screen for Jedi.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure there's still blue screen for a lot of stuff I saw in Empire. I'm not sure about Jedi.
The only film class that I ever took was script writing, so...
No, I saw the behind the scenes for Jedi, Matt. And yeah, they showed like the speeder bike chase, and that was all green screen.
Okay. Well, you know why they did that, obviously, right?
Blue lightsabers?
Actually, Luke was using a green lightsaber that movie.
Yeah, that's true.
No, the theory I'm going with is that they were in a forest. It helped hide some of the fragmented and pixelations and other gunk that they couldn't quite reach. They're on green, so why not have a green background? It'll help erase it better.
Anyway,
just theories. I go on. I've researched this stuff.
Anyway, Thomas, you're next.
So we've gone with
my first one was sets.
Miniatures. Sets, turtle. I guess I can see how this could annoy people, but this was an interesting idea that this is kind of just like a story that they're not directly involved with. There's like essentially two stories going on at once because there's the whole murder plot and all that, and then there's the TARDIS crew just kind of bumbling about trying to figure out how to like sort of interfering with it and trying to help out, but like ultimately, rather than the Doctor being normal size and being able to shout at people and whatever, they've just got to try and finagle their way through a story that's kind of just happening, rather than necessarily being able to directly communicate with anyone. And even like the only time they try to, that never works.
That was one thing I wasn't sure about. Were we meant to take the impression that they had heard them saying police but couldn't figure out who it was, and that's why the cop showed up in the operator's office? Or that the cop was going to be in the
I think the
operator's
theory
office
is
anyway?
that they had some weird goings on with the phones over there, so the person probably called the constable to go, "Hey, can you listen over here in case something else pops up from them?"
Yeah, it was basically the operator could tell that it wasn't the guy whose house it was.
That it was
Yeah, she thought the voice was, in the first call was suspicious, and then there's the weird incident where there was weird sounds and then nobody on the line. And then coming back to another phone call, they pretended to fit another phone call over and then just went, "Yeah, it's still the same guy."
Okay.
And so they got the cops in on that.
So the constable is listening on the second time they talk to him. He's just like, "Yep, it's time for me to go over to the house and go, no."
And he showed up just in time for stuff to blow up.
Well, yeah. Just in time to miss the pyrotechnics, but to figure out where the bad guys are.
All right. So, Bill.
So I kind of like the premise of the episode. I like the idea that this is an aspect of traveling through time and space that could happen if something goes wrong on the instruments. So it seems to fit, it fits with the whole dimensional transcendentality of it and everything. And in looking at it, and I imagine this is more like one of the things that led to the retcon rather than it, but the whole, if kind of like we talked about Edge of Destruction, or I think at least I mentioned, if you look at this through the modern lens of, oh, this was a TARDIS that had been, planned to be junked, and the Doctor took it, it makes perfect sense that the instruments would fuck up at some point and have something like this happen.
I mean, obviously this was a failure of the relative dimensional stabilizer. I'm just saying that right now.
Right.
Obviously that's what came up in the error on the error board for those brief 3 seconds that Susan saw it.
Right.
Before the doors failed.
Speaking of the error board, I was a little disappointed when I was trying to find a particular line until I realized that it's just lore from rehearsals and not from the actual episode. Because I was trying to catch the Doctor telling Susan to check the fornicator, but that's not actually in the episode.
Check the fornicator, Susan.
While you're at it, don't forget to adjust the camouflage.
And don't forget to finish your matriculation. Matriculate? I never even kissed a girl. Sorry, Animaniacs. Okay.
I'm sorry,
Tim.
I'm just thinking of Brian Blessed tells in one show where he's like, "What's this thing called again? Sounds like a wanking device." Anyways.
Yes. Things I liked. I really loved all the moments that they tried to add pseudoscience into this episode, such as the changes in size would affect the pitch of our voices, so it sound like buzzing to them, and then the when they listen to the people speak on the phone, it's like this like low grumbling, and like how the sink was like an echo chamber, and moments like, and how the doctor finds out that restoring Barbara to her normal size will cure her. You know, like, just moments like that is like it's not hard science, but it sounds plausible
It's
within the
enough
context
feasible
of
logic
the...
that it sounds like we can go with this.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. They did a good job walking that tightrope, I think.
I like the way they gave an explanation that had a logical consistency to it, but at the same time it got me thinking about things I wouldn't have thought about otherwise. Like when they talked about food after having given that explanation, I'm like, well, if the molecular density of the food is different than the molecular density of the people eating it, can you even attempt to eat food while you're in this condition? Probably not. And just sort of thoughts like that I wouldn't have had otherwise. But they were successful in coming up with something consistent enough that it kind of made sense how they solved it.
It did. All right, so we're up to me now.
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed this most. The thing that I think I enjoyed the most is the fact that this is a very early version of the shrinking man trope. I think there's only one thing earlier than this, and that's the film The Incredible Shrinking Man from 1957. This has since been seen so many times later in sci-fi. I mean, Honey, I Shrunk the Kids was a whole series that was based on this concept.
I was gonna say, also wasn't there like a late '60s, early '70s show that was based around the idea?
Land of the Giants. It
Land
was
of the
one of those
Giants.
Irwin Allen films.
Irwin Allen, yep.
Irwin Allen shows. And actually, interestingly enough, and I was going to bring this up later, is the name Planet of the Giants more fits the Irwin Allen show, as it's literally about a spaceship that goes through a cosmic storm and lands on a planet where people are 12 times their size.
I don't know if it like counts as a shrinking man thing, but Laurel and Hardy made a short film called Brats in which they play their own children, and they like are acting against like oversized sets and props.
Not to the scale that that we're dealing with.
Yeah,
here.
that's slightly questionable, but okay.
I mean, I think this was around the same time that Ant-Man appeared in comics. And that would be using the shrinking man trope, because yeah, he's about the size of an ant, which we see.
Yeah,
1962. So yeah, it was a couple of years after Ant-Man. But that means that they were already debating this when Ant-Man came out. So I just like that, this became a cliched trope.
Mostly because like the next 10 to 15 years would beat this idea to death.
Mm-hmm. But Doctor Who was a very early entrant.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Feels like every Saturday morning cartoon ever had to have at least one episode with shrinking in it.
Yep. So what didn't we like about the episode, Matt?
I love the sets, but some of the props didn't quite pan out. While they looked nice while standing still, maybe the fly in particular stood out as just a really bad prop that just sat there and wiggled a little. It did its job much better when it sat on a pile of giant wheat and pretended to be dead.
I mean, to be fair, it's better than some Doctor Who props.
I will say that it's better than some episodes, but it's still by no means perfection. But they definitely gave it an effort, but it's just like, no, this is still not quite working, guys. Nice try, but your sets are better.
All right. Thomas.
Let's see. I guess just like the guy who's essentially the villain, because he just, I don't know, something about it just didn't, something about his acting, while it wasn't necessarily horrible, it just didn't work for me. Especially like the whole thing of like trying to disguise his voice and he's basically not. And it's just like, come on, put on a voice, even if it doesn't sound like him.
It's
Like-
literally the one Die Hard
He just
movie
uses
where
a washcloth to disguise his voice. It's like,
Yeah.
see what a criminal mastermind I am.
it's like the one Die Hard movie where Bruce Willis puts his hand over the camera and talks to the guy normally, expecting that the camera also is the microphone. To which the villain is quick to remind him, "I can still hear you."
Yeah. And it's like, it's funny because it's like, and he thinks, yes, that was successful. And it's like, yeah, except like, you didn't think about the fucking operator at all.
Who's probably heard the owner's voice multiple times if they're making fancy calls like that.
Yeah.
All right. Bill.
Oh, where to begin? Picking one. Barbara, just say that, oh shit, this is a problem that it's super powerful pesticide because you got it on your hand. Just maybe go to the sink so you can wash your hand off, or in
Say
any way do
something.
literally anything other than hide it until you pass out.
Hide it and then freak out
Yeah.
every time someone mentions the poison for more than 5
Right?
seconds.
It's not even like she was
Yeah.
good at keeping the secret. Like that was, yeah. I'm mad at
Yeah,
them too for not figuring it out.
That whole thing kind of confused me because I must have missed the bit where she actually touched the thing.
Well, she touched the thing. It was
It was
going on
literally
about
like it was like the second they walked over to it.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like when she's starting to get sick later, I was like, "Wait, where'd this come from?" And then when you were doing the
I didn't
summary, I
miss
was
it
like,
because
"Oh, I just missed that bit."
you must have been completely zoned out because she
Mhm.
immediately touched it, immediately got something sticky in her hand, immediately asked for a handkerchief, and Ian completely ignored the fact that she had touched the stuff and was complaining
right,
that
and
she got her
Ian's
hands
paying
sticky.
so little attention, he didn't realize that she had done this.
It's just like,
Yeah.
oh. Matter of fact, actually, it went on for so long that I'm just sitting here going, like, are you over this now, Barbara? Because it doesn't seem to be affecting you. At least not that you're passing on to us yet. But then
Right.
all of a sudden, the third episode, they start going, "Oh, you look tired. Oh, you look sickly. Are you all right?" I'm like, "Oh, for cry out loud!"
All right. Tim.
Going on what someone else said. I really didn't like any of the performances by the big people. The two scientists and the businessman seemed, rather like stiff, awkward, and I didn't believe their motivations.
Well, you do realize that one of them did turn into a stiff, don't you? His acting problems were
Yes.
very quickly solved.
Yes. And they I also thought like just the way they were written wasn't very well in terms of their like their character arcs, in the fact that the guy who shoots the other guy and then he brings the other scientists and says, "Oh, by the way, like he shot himself," is like and the way he delivers the line, "Oh, don't tell the police that. It's clear he was shot from several feet away." It was like, and it's that like I don't understand. Like, are you a good guy or a bad guy, or are you just
Technically, he's a bad guy too.
dense?
It's very obvious at that point that he's obviously a bad guy too.
Technically, he's kind of a neutral.
He's in it for himself.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got the government guy who gets killed. He's a good guy. You've got the greedy businessman. He's a bad guy. And then you've got the other scientist who's kind of a neutral. He mostly is believing in the fact that this is going to be the ultimate. He's trying to do good to mankind by getting rid of locusts, plague, etc.
Where?
I still had a news article that had a advert come up from when I was looking at news. When I was looking at news and rating it, I left a few things open. Suddenly something popped up, an advert. Anyway, like I was saying, he wanted to do good with this pesticide to help, wipe out plague, etc. So in that, he was good thinking. He was willing to side with this evil guy to get this out. But then once he realized that it was actually going to harm all life on Earth, he wanted to stop it. So he's kind of a neutral character.
Yeah.
I see.
He's a villain until he reaches that line in the sand, and that particular line makes him go, no.
But honestly, what I didn't like the entire big person plot, because it was completely and totally unnecessary. They could have given more screen time to the low perspective stuff, put them in different forms of mortal danger, and just cut this whole thing, instead trying to make an environmental speech, because you realize that pesticide was basically their interpretation of DDT.
Yeah.
I have some remarks on that, but I'm going to hold back on that for now.
Why? This would be why? Is it a particular scene, or?
Well, I think more or less the fact that the reason why they need that second plot is because they didn't have the budget to do those kind of effects all the way through. They barely had the budget for this.
I know.
I'm just saying. I understand where you're coming from, but that would be if they had unlimited money resources kind of deal.
I don't think. Would it cost that much to do like a wide angle view of like a foot falling down, and then have the TARDIS crew jump out of the way of an imaginary foot?
It would look chintzy as hell. The cat thing was already pretty bad.
But it was, it would. I think they could have gotten away with it. But yeah, they would have needed some more large-scale props, I guess.
They would need a lot more sets, and they would need a lot more props, large and small.
All right, favorite scene. Matt.
Favorite scene. Trying to think, which one do I want to go with? I'm gonna go. I'll go with the bit where the Doctor and Susan hiding the drain as the guys come over to wash their hands. In particular, that scene with them hiding seems to be a really popular shot that keeps showing up a lot. And I was just kind of wondering what the context of that clip was, and then now that seeing this episode, like, oh, they're hiding. They're in the runoff water pipe of the drain, trying to keep from getting drowned. Okay.
All right. Thomas?
I feel like I had something else, but my mind's just kind of blanking. So instead, I'm gonna go with when they're reading through the formula after they've copied it off the gigantic notepad. And the fact that they actually have Ian be like, okay, yeah, I get some of this, but a lot of this is like I have no idea what some of this is. Just because it feels like in other stuff that I've seen of Ian, they just try to have him like, oh yeah, he knows whatever we need him to know for this particular episode. Whereas this is like, yeah. Whereas like this is just kind of like,
School teacher confirmed.
yeah, I don't know. And the doctor has to be like, oh, come on, it's simple. And he's just like, I don't fucking know this. I'm just a school teacher, dude.
Yeah, it was a great reminder that he's just supposed to be a science teacher. He's not supposed to know stuff you need a freaking, master's to doctorate in chemistry.
He needs enough to learn how to run a middle school science lab. And not murder the children.
All right, Bill?
We're talking about favorite scene?
Yep.
My favorite scene would be I liked the growing scene with the shrinking seed. I thought that was pulled off very visually well.
All right. Tim?
Oh, I just love the scene where the giant fly sneaks up on Barbara and then it makes her faint. That was a very well done scene. Like the best use of oversized insect puppets that the episode had.
Yeah, that was the scene I looked at, and I was just like, help me, help me. Thought that should have been our opening.
Yeah, I mentioned I was thinking that too, but I'm just like, maybe not. I don't know.
I mean, the only idea I had for a bump was like the thing of them in front of the guy lying over dead, and then some Neon Genesis Stephen Killian music. Just because it looks like when they're looking out and this giant fucking head coming out of the ground or whatever.
All right. So my favorite scene was when Ian and Barbara start climbing down the chain into the... Because obviously they had to have enough of that frickin' chain there for them to do it. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's a frickin' drain chain. That's kind of cool.
I did see one little behind the scenes tidbit on that, and apparently, according to Susan, it was a royal pain to climb up and down that dang thing. It's not that it was badly made, it's just that it was a really odd size for the chain links.
Okay. And so now we're to least favorite scenes.
Oh, as an honorable mention, I remember the scene I was going to say was my favorite, but I had momentarily forgotten. The operator and the cop, like, figuring out that something is up and that they need to send someone to figure out what is going on.
The side characters being the best side characters.
Yes. And being more effective than the TARDIS crew.
All right.
They're only an inch tall. Give them a break. Okay, least favorite scene. Okay, yeah, this is an early one that got my goat. So Ian's checking out this big giant matchbox, right? And obviously he's still not sure what to think about all this, although he's still saying no to Susan's original idea, which is the same idea the doctor's giving to Barbara. But then they're hearing this big thundering noise, and suddenly the lights are blacked out, and when they go to run, he immediately face plants further into the matchbox. How do you even with left feet on both sides?
I will do you one better. Why the fuck do you climb into the matchbox in the first place?
Because fire pretty.
Someone wanted to play with the giant sticks, apparently.
So the funny thing, that scene bothered me because you could hear them flipping the light switch. At least it sounded to me like you could actually hear the click.
Oh, I didn't.
Of, like,
I didn't
someone
hear that.
turning the
I
lights
just heard the
off.
giant thundering sounds, and I'm like, oh no! And then stupidity. Plunk.
No, I'm like, seriously, Ian, you find a giant matchbox, you just have to climb inside. You know you're going to get stuck in there. I knew it the second.
If it wasn't him getting stuck in it, it would be Susan like twisting an ankle. Shake my head.
All right. So, Thomas?
You know what? I'm just gonna go with when the guy gets shot, because it's like, dude, you're seriously out on the, like, not on the street, but you're out in the front yard, seemingly, and you just shot him in broad daylight. What the fuck? What a fucking idiot!
I will give them the benefit of a doubt that we don't know where exactly this house is at, but the fact that you just did a really noisy thing in someone's yard, it means someone is bound to
It
hear
looked
it.
like suburbia.
Yeah. And you've just, like, shot a dude in broad daylight in the open. Like, how the fuck were there not cops around there, like, immediately?
Just a bunch of constables hopping the fence, all of them. What's all this then? What's all this then? Like a Monty Python sketch.
But I mean, it should have been, neighbors should have called the police. And there wasn't any of that going on. It was really kind of contrived.
Yeah. Like, there wasn't even, like, a bullshit silencer type deal. It's just like,
a little
nope,
tiny
it's-
one shotgun.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that still makes a lot of noise.
Yeah.
All right, Bill?
So I am going to go with probably the scene with using the washcloth to disguise his voice. It was ridiculous, and it fooled nobody. And we didn't even get to hear like what the so-called disguised voice sounded like. But clearly, even the operator was just like, "What the fuck is this shit?"
Yeah. It's like, it's very clearly the same voice.
Oh, here it is. I just found a picture of him doing it.
Like, I don't
Yes,
know if it
folks.
was supposed. I don't know if it was supposed to be comically inept, and this was like secretly just like slapstick. But
Yes,
that's
folks.
the only way it works.
This is our mastermind of this episode, right here in the chat, folks.
It's like the only person that falls for it is like the person that he ends up being put through to.
Yeah.
I guess the idea is it's someone who hasn't necessarily.
But
heard
even
this
that
before.
person, if you listen to the conversation, he was like, "Yes, I do sound way different than I normally do. It's because I'm excited about this product."
Yeah, or it's like, yes, there is an issue with the line or something like that. Or
Yeah, that too.
There seems to be something wrong with my receiver. Yes, I'm very excited about this product. I can't wait to show you more information about it.
And
How it
even that part
nurtures
makes
everything.
even the claim about the bad line is more ridiculous when he's talking perfectly like normal with his own voice, and then he switches to the washcloth.
Oh,
It's
Mr.
like,
Washcloth, never leave
like,
me. Here, I'm a master of voice
Nobody is that
disguising.
stupid to believe that the line only goes down when you're handing off the phone to the other person.
All right. So are we at Tim now?
Yes.
I believe we are. And my least favorite scene is the scene where they're at the grains, and Ian says, "Oh, we should be careful not to touch it." And it's like, wait a minute. Did you not notice that Barbara had picked up one of the grains and is like, and then like that's the start of a whole sequence of things like, where Ian is like, and everyone is too dense to notice what's Barbara has been infected. You know, it's like Like that warning comes too late, and it's frustratingly too late for both Barbara and the audience. I mean, and it should have occurred to Ian as like, we should be careful not to touch it. Oh, by the way, you didn't touch it, did you? Like, that would be. But no, Ian is off in his own like world, you know.
Because if you touched it, oh boy, and starts walking off.
Yeah.
All right. So my least favorite scene is the cat, because it's such a contrived. The cat only shows up to menace them for the episode ending, and then just scarpers off. I'm like, seriously?
Mm.
No,
my
cat
God,
sees
yeah.
tiny people. That's going to be cat toy.
I mean, short attention span does sound like a cat thing to do, especially if they're waiting for the guy on the floor to feed them.
But the fact is that they would still smell like something. So yes, cat would go give them a couple of whacks.
True.
Attempt to knock
not-
them over at least.
It's just like, oh my God, what will happen? Yep, nothing.
Yeah.
we just needed a cliffhanger. We didn't have anything else.
Yep. Menace
Never
by
mind.
cat. Stay still. All right, I'm gonna go lift. No. All right, final thoughts, Matt.
Final thoughts. That image does not want to show. That's what my final thought, and that is, there we go. Another shot of the cat showed up. Final thoughts. Relatively short episode, wasted no time for the most part. There's one or two silly things, but the rest of it does hold up pretty well together. And there's enough pseudo logic going around that you can at least follow it, and it doesn't seem completely nonsensical to at least how they're running it. And yeah, that's about all I can really say about that. Most of it's pretty good and it's nicely shot, and they did what they could with a very minuscule budget, which shows at times.
All right, Thomas.
For as much issues as this has, I think this is still at least an okay story. I can honestly see now to a point why they cut this down to 3 episodes. Like, yeah, it probably flowed better as 3 than 4. I mean, I'm still curious to watch the reconstructions of them separating episode 3 and the what was originally going to be episode 4 out, just to see how they flow with the first 2 episodes. But yeah, I can kind of see why they ended up doing that, honestly, because it was probably just more of the normal sized people stuff. You know, I'd basically recommend people check this out just because, I mean, it's 3 episodes. You could literally watch this in an hour.
A little more than, but yeah.
Yeah, like, you know, if they're all 25 minutes, then you would at least get through.
You could edit an
half
hour
of the
cut of
movie.
this together easily.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's like, I guess, I don't know why I tripped myself up by like that, but yeah, like you could watch it in like the same span of time it would take you to watch like a fairly short feature film. But yeah, like I feel like Doctor Who has done Shrunken People better. The few other times it's happened, I can only really think of 2 other examples, but and one of them is New Who. But yeah, I am not entirely sure how to feel about this, but like, oh yeah, it's like it's not bad. It could have been a lot better, but for for this period Doctor Who, it's not too bad.
All right, Bill.
So I did not like the execution of this episode. I pretty much felt that the TARDIS crew should have either had nothing to do with the full-size plot or noticeably more, because in the end it just comes off as they're being completely bumbling, and it's almost far enough to be like comedy, but it's not far enough to the point where it just seems like flailing in the dark and failing. At the end, it does kind of feel like an episode was kind of cut out where they just kind of like, okay, well, we did a thing. Now let's just jump into TARDIS, which normally, there'd be some effort to get back to the TARDIS. And yeah, overall, I think this probably would have been a stronger story if they had made a fourth episode, even if they had not added any extra sets and just kind of like used the effects that they had with a little bit more suspense, because I feel like they were in a lot less danger than you normally expect in this sort of story, and I don't think they were not. I'm pretty sure they were not the first tiny people in a giant world story. There was material to draw inspiration from, I think. So I think they could have found ways to beef this up and make it a more effective story.
All right. Tim?
This episode could have used better actors, as well as it could have gone on for a bit longer. It would have been nice to see the two storylines eventually converge, and for the big people to discover the small people, and how, and that could have raised up more questions and challenges and intrigues as well. I thought it was very odd that this was only 3 episodes. So it was an interesting idea, but I think it really did need more time to ferment and make it believable.
All right. Anything more?
That's about it.
All right. So I think this is an okay episode, and notice I said okay and not good. It has some okay points. It has some decent points, but it also has some points that they really needed to rethink when they wrote it. I really do not like the big plot. I don't really think it meshed well, and I also agree that you really did not get the sense of danger with the crew that much. So it was more of a not really something I would watch again. All right, let's rate. All right, and Matt, you were first.
After all those reviews, I get the feeling I'm gonna be the high bar. I'm willing to give this a 4. Yeah, I knew it.
Thomas?
Well, it's better than the Web Planet. So
By a long shot.
I can't justify giving it under a 3, but I'm trying to think if I can justify giving it any higher.
I'll give the Web Planet a 2, so that's not a bar I have to worry about. So did you, actually.
Yeah, I'll give it a 3. So just about average.
All right. Bill?
So I've been waffling between 2 different scores, and yeah, I think I'll go with the 2.5. I'm like a 2.75. but
Wow.
I'll go with 2.5.
Wow.
Tim.
I did like some of the props and the ideas, so I'm gonna give this a 3.5.
I turned into Tim for an episode. Okay.
Gooble gobble.
And
One of
I
us,
am going to
one
give
of
this
us.
a 3. Like I said, it's okay. It is not good. It is not great. It is just merely okay. It's kind of a forgettable episode for me. So that will average us out to a 3.2, making Thomas and myself the most correct. And 3.2 will put us at 269 out of 342 things reviewed. It is on par with Arc of Infinity, The Abominable Snowmen, Robot, interestingly enough, Pandorica Opens, The Big Bang, Time Lash. Hey, it's on par with Time Lash.
Woohoo! Of course,
Stones of
nothing is
Blood,
Time Lash.
The Highlanders, and The Daleks' Master Plan. It is better than Rings of a Cotton, though I still need to re-review that. Cold War, Asylum of the Daleks, Invasion of the Dinosaurs, Survival, Planet of Fire, and the Sea Devils, and is not as good as Fear. Oh my God, Fear Her rated better than this.
Ugh.
Ascension of the Cybermen, The Timeless Children, The Massacre, Modern Undead, Evil of the Daleks, In the Forest of the Night, Planet of the Daleks, etc. There we go. 269 out of 342. That is all we have to say about Planet of the Giants.
So we have anywhere from a 2.5 to a 4. Let us know in the comments which you think is correct, or if you think we're all wrong and it's a 1 or a 5. And of course, don't forget to like or dislike the video if you do, and to subscribe on YouTube or follow on Twitch to keep getting our new updates.
All right, so next week we're going to continue closing out the Hartnell episodes. We're going a couple of episodes up the season chain here, dropping one companion, picking up another with The Romans, written by Dennis Spooner and starring William Hartnell as the Doctor, Jacqueline Hill as Barbara Wright, William Russell as Ian Chesterton, and Maureen O'Brien as Vicky. See you next week.